Every year, there are over 10,000 appeals to the Supreme Court, challenging a decision made by a lower court. But each year, only about 100 are granted plenary review. In the previous term, the court had a grant rate of about 1.1%. Buried among the other 99% of cases are many controversial issues the court turns down.
So it has to be a very significant case for the United States Supreme Court to take it.
One of these cases is Frazier versus Smith. In this suit, Frazier, the plaintiff, challenged a Florida statute requiring each student to say the Pledge of Allegiance during class unless excused by their parent.
I think what they're saying here by not taking the case is, under the 10th Amendment, things that aren't specifically our domain belong to the states. This is an area that probably belongs to the states.
Where this case parts ways with past pledge cases is that Frazier does not challenge the constitutionality of saying the pledge in class. Rather, he addresses the unprecedented issue of parental rights when they differ from those of the student.
The United States Constitution doesn't talk about this tension between a child's interest and the parent's interest.
Frazier argues that the statute violates his First Amendment right because it gives the right to free speech of reciting the pledge to the parents and the state instead of the individual.
Typically, though, the way the issue is presented is a tension between the ability of the student to express their First Amendment rights and the school wants to limit those rights. So you have the parents and the students on the same page. The issue presented in Frazier is more one of parental consent. Does the student have the obligation to get the parent's consent to opt out of the Pledge of Allegiance, or can just the student decide to do that on their own?
But Florida isn't the only state with statutes limiting students' rights. Utah has a very similar pledge policy.
Each student shall be informed by posting a notice in a conspicuous place that the student has the right not to participate in reciting the pledge, and a student shall be excused from reciting the pledge upon written request from the student's parent or legal guardian. So specific to the Pledge of Allegiance, that's the law for the public schools in the state of Utah.
Does this law sound familiar? Probably because the Utah Code is very similar to the Florida statute.
There are national legislator meetings where they all get together and they have conventions and they share laws with each other, and it's clear we had to have worked on this together. The language is too close. It's identical. That doesn't happen on accident.
There's a tension there between the students' exercise of their First Amendment rights, their ability to express themselves, and the parents' ability to exercise control and authority over their child.
These policies about parental rights regarding their students differ significantly from state to state.
Utah is probably the most parent-trusting state in the country. Utah has the most liberal homeschool statute. I think that's, in a lot of ways, that's a good thing. We entrust parents in our state with almost unlimited power over their children. We trust parents to raise their children.
Even though the Supreme Court turned down the case, the fact that the 11th Circuit upheld the constitutionality of the Florida statute has given more power to parental rights over students.
It wouldn't be binding in Utah, but if Utah has not decided the issue, lawyers could say, well, look, Judge, the 11th Circuit has decided this, and you ought to follow the 11th Circuit. So you could use it for persuasive authority, but not binding authority.
But let's say the United States Supreme Court took that case and ruled on it one way or the other. Utah has a law dealing with this. Let's say they found differently than Utah's law. What they'd be telling all of the states is your laws are unconstitutional, or your laws are wrong.
Because the Supreme Court hasn't decided this issue at the federal level, the authority remains with the states. For many places, this means more control for parents. However, the debate will continue. Students will continue to advocate their rights.
I should be allowed to have jurisdiction over certain aspects of my life.
And parents will continue to exercise control where they feel necessary.
I empathize with parents, being a parent, having children, that you do want to exercise authority and control over your children.
The debate about parental rights in the school system will not be easily resolved.